Let me introduce Julie Rowe. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Kate Dalley.
Hi there. How are you? Are you good?
I'm doing very well, and I'm happy to say that, and I always love talking to you.
Me too.
I'm grateful to be on your show, and I consider you a great friend, so thank you for having me on.
Ditto. I feel the exact same way. So I really appreciate you coming on, because let me introduce you to some of maybe the audience members that haven't heard that you've written 2 books, A Greater Tomorrow, My Journey Beyond the Veil, and The Time Is Now. You're LDS. You wrote 2 NDE books, near-death experience books, and okay, so you and I mostly you, landed in some articles recently, Washington Post, Drudge Report, MSN. I mean, it was everywhere. Salt Lake Tribune. I was getting it emailed from all over the country. I'm sure, as were you.
Yes. Wasn't that so nice of them?
It was great. It was great.
I love it when, I guess you could say, somebody decides to give me and us free publicity and let not just the nation know, but I guess whoever else wants to listen in the world, that I'm a nutcase.
Well, the article...
whatever works. You know what?
Whatever works.
The Lord will take whatever message and turn it for his good, whether somebody decides to warp and make false accusations and lies and all kinds of stuff. I love seeing the plan in action. I love the orchestration. Going through it, you and I both know, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, not so much fun on our end. On my end, it was pretty brutal, but I am grateful for the tender mercies of the Lord.
Right.
And he helps us prepare the best we can, and then when it hits, we go, well, that was worse than I thought.
Right. Well, I'll tell you.
But also good, because coming out from that initial storm just prepares us for the next thing coming.
That's true. The title of the article, if people haven't seen this thing, was Some Mormons Stocking Up Amid Fears That Doomsday Could Come This Month. And then the entire article was chocked full of things I don't even think I've heard you talk about. I'm trying
to remember which one it was, because I had people sending them to me. I knew some of that was going to hit the fan, but I had so much going on. Truthfully, I skimmed through most of them, maybe once, and I don't know, was that the Daily UK? Which was that, the Salt Lake Tribune?
This was Salt Lake Tribune. This was Salt Lake Tribune.
Oh.
Yeah. A lot about the Shemitah, blood moons. It was that the world's going to end the last day of September, and that we were all going to fall off the cliff.
They give me all the credit. They give me all the credit and all the blame for what didn't happen, right?
Right. And
stuff I never even said.
Yeah, it was so funny. They put quotes by you, and then they put a lot in the article that you hadn't talked about. So it made it kind of look like you had said these things. And I was thinking, I talked to her, and I've never heard her say any of these things. So it was a shock.
And the funny thing is that kind of spurred some other things. There were a couple that came out right before them around the time that Salt Lake Tribune did theirs, with Fox 13 and KTV and some other things going on. And then it kind of took off, because, of course, they got to take advantage of 9/11 weekend, as well as, Sunday the 13th and the 14th, and the Shemitah and the blood moons coming up. And so they're going to capitalize on that, and anybody else they can, to get a spin on their story. But what's interesting to me, I mean, there's so many things interesting to me about this, is that not just in that article, but like every single one, never once did I talk to the media. Not once.
Right.
I have an official statement that my husband quickly sent to me via email when I forwarded on one of the emails from one of those media outlets. And basically I was prompted by the Spirit to send that on to my publisher, Chad Daybell, and then on to my husband, Jeff, because I was running out the door to take my daughter to volleyball practice, and I'm like, I don't have time for this. I'm a mom. I don't have time for this.
Sure.
I've given my message, and if people want to hear the truth, they can go to my website. They can go to your site. They can go listen to the radio shows I've done. They can read the books. They can read every single thing I've posted on my website at julieroweprepare.com, and they can get to the truth if they really want to know it. But, it's a lot easier just to take somebody else's word for it and to pick up on something on Facebook or Drudge or Huffington or wherever and say, wow, this lady's crazy, right? Or anything else. So I'm confident that those who are truly seeking truth will find that. They'll go to the work. They'll go to the effort. They'll do what I say in the books and every radio interview I've done, and that is, guys, take it to the Lord, read your scriptures, and just get to the basics and do what you're supposed to do. Don't look to me.
Right.
And I'm just sharing my experience. It's crazy to me how so many people don't seem to want to do that.
I know.
They don't seem to, and I don't mean that judgmentally. I mean,
right.
Maybe I'm no different, right? We want to take the shortcut, easy way out, kind of the way we are as human beings. But,
right. Well, I'll tell you, you've had these
funny.
2 books out, and we probably should go back to those. If somebody's just joining us and joining this show and doesn't understand, the things that were written, I've read similar accounts in other NDE books, and there's plenty of them. Betty Eady and Visions of Glory and all these different books. And I think what's interesting about this time that we're in right now is that a lot of people are feeling like we're on the verge of something. Now, when people I say that the end of the world is coming, I don't really ever say that. What I say is trials and tribulations are coming, and I can feel it. Everybody, people I talk to can feel it, and I'm sure people have come to you and said, I'm feeling the same way. You chose to put yours in a book.
People all over the planet. It's not unique to the United States or to Utah or anywhere else. I don't even live in Utah, although some people think I live in Arizona, but I got news for people. I don't live there either. So if that tells you anything about their media spins, that, they have no idea what's going on. Right. And those that do are spinning what's coming at us. But you're right. While I haven't really read very many of those near-death experiences, since going public with my story in 2014, my first book came out in the middle of May, I've had thousands, literally, of people contacting me and people that I've met that have shared, whether it's just one dream or a thought or impression or someone they knew, and several people with NDEs, whether they wrote a book or not, that have come forward to witness to me that not only am I not crazy, but they're not either.
Right,
and it's very validating. And you get to the point where you're like, it really doesn't matter what other people say. I know what I know. I know that God knows it. And I'm supposed to share what I'm supposed to share. And I hope that I can share a message of hope and love, a voice of warning, but really letting people know we don't need to be in fear and panic mode. We need to be in preparation mode. But that means living our life today how we're supposed to live it for tomorrow. Because if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing today, we'll be in the right place tomorrow, wherever that's supposed to be.
Right.
And
I agree.
Not having a freak out.
I totally agree with you. And you've gotten a lot of heat. I mean, a lot of heat. And not the other books haven't, but yours has. If you want to talk about some of the things that you talk about in the book, because I don't know why people are going a little crazy over this, because I've heard similar accounts before, and that actually gives me some sort of solace knowing that people are having some similar things happen to them. But also, I don't know that this is something that you go sell everything you own and then go buy tents and food storage. I mean, that would lack common sense. I mean, people need to have common sense about this, right? So,
well, I haven't sold everything I own. In fact, I'm sitting in a room looking at a beautiful fish tank that my husband's put together. Now, some people might say, well, that sure isn't very practical. You have a fish tank. What are you going to do with that? Well, we live our life. It's beautiful.
Exactly.
It's enjoyable.
Exactly.
Do I spend a lot of time and energy on home decorating and things like that? No, that's not part of the journey for me right now. But that doesn't mean it's not for somebody else. And, like I said, my daughter's in volleyball, been taking piano lessons. My boys are in sports.
Life goes on.
And you live your life. And this isn't a doomsday. This is, guys, let's just be smart. Let's balance it out. I have been told to simplify. But what that means for me might be different from somebody else. And
that's true.
And I'm not to judge that. I'm just here to testify and witness and to share a very, very small portion of my experience. And I think it's so interesting how we are so quick to judge and label and to jump to conclusions and often to misjudge and falsify, often being well-intentioned. I like to think that the majority of the people out there who have maybe caused me or others close to me some pain and anguish and some distress, the majority of them are not intending to do so. Perhaps they're projecting their own fears and frustrations or insecurities and issues outward. In other situations, they're just confused. They're trying to get clarity and understanding. And to them, I think that's great. I applaud that. That's what we're supposed to be doing. In other situations, who knows? There's the whole gamut there, a whole spectrum of why we act the way we do. And that's not for me to judge. But that also, I've been given very strict counsel when I had my experience, and then many times by the Spirit since then, and then just my own common sense, and from people close to me, my husband as well as those who care about me, who Kate, it's amazing. They have brains as well. And I guess there are some people out there that might think that I'm running solo here, or that I don't have some kind of feedback from people close to me, or I read something a year ago, and I try not to even get online with some of this stuff now. I'm not on Facebook or any of that, and I don't get on these alternative forums for a lot of reasons. But I've even had people think that maybe they think I have no friends and family at all, that I have to go to the extent of making up my own avatars and stuff like that. And I think, that's
really
funny. I've never even thought of that.
Interesting.
And then I've had feedback from friends of mine who've been on Facebook and other places who have claimed that they've come across people that claim they used to be in my wards or stakes, or that they knew me growing up. And everything from they act like they're my best friend to I was the weirdest, craziest person they've ever met. And I can tell you right now, of the few that have contacted me that actually still have my current phone number, that are kind of looking out for me, the majority of those are completely off base.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying I'm not a little strange. Right?
Right. We're all a little strange, Julie. I mean, come on.
What's normal, what's not?
Right.
I mean, let's get real here. But to say somebody is or isn't in tune, or is crazy or isn't, even those that claim to be close to me, I would caution those who are out there. Think about the times in our lives where we've had somebody where they knew us or not, or whatever degree they knew us, and how often did they really know us, and what's really going on in our intimate life.
Right.
And I would say that in most cases it's very few and far between. And so, just another example, I think I'm just kind of like a little helper for some of those people out there to either sift through what's real, or maybe sift through who their real friends are. There's a sifting going on, and there's definitely a shift.
Well,
and I guess I get to help be a part of the catalyst for that.
Okay, fair enough. Let's go back to the NDEs. About what was the year? 2004.
It was September 28th and 29th of 2004 that I had my initial experience. Okay. I had some experiences before that had to do with dreams and visions, but the actual going into the spirit world was the 20th and 29th when I was in the hospital.
Okay.
And then I had a couple other experiences later on, about a month later, and then some time after that too. But I don't go into that. You look at how people react just to the small portion of information I put in a 2-day experience, and the freak out that's occurred. Can you imagine if I told them more? So,
wow.
It's not part of the Lord's plan. There will be no more. I am not going to write a full third book. I'll put it that way.
Okay. I was wondering about that. I mean, is this something where you feel that you're getting constant things, you're feeling, you have feelings and you're shown things constantly, and you want to constantly tell a crowd these things? Or is this, look, I put it in the book and this is what happened and this is the only thing I want to share?
Here's the honest truth is we all have our strengths and weaknesses. We all come with our personalities. Anybody who knows me knows that there have been times in my life when I've been quieter, and there have been times in my life when I've been louder, and sometimes the silence is deafening. Other times I feel like I want to shout it from the rooftops, whether it's this or any other message that I feel strongly about. The majority of my life growing up, my personality was such that the environment I grew up in, and my perspective, of course, is that I had opinions, I had experiences. Most of the time I didn't share them, other than a very, very small circle of friends or close family members, and even at that, I withheld, very much liking my privacy. Although the other side of my personality is such that I have worked in business and as a teacher and other things, at least I never worked as a full-time teacher other than student teaching and subbing, but I have worked in different capacities in the workforce where I have done more of a public setting, right? So I can do that, but when it comes to a combination of this message combined with maybe a public sharing or public message, very much a stretch for me. Although anybody who can listen to me now compared to like the first radio show I did in May of 2014 will see that there's definitely a difference in my comfort level and in my confidence level in being able to just kind of say, I'm growing into this. Does that make sense? So I have a clear recollection that I accepted this assignment when I had my experience in 2004. Part of that experience, initially when I met John and
the spirit guide,
in the book I describe him, as a distant ancestor. I really don't like to even use the word guide because there's kind of this other side of the occult that they call them spirit guides. And so when I hear the word guide, it kind of triggers me with spirit guide. John is not my quote-unquote spirit guide. He is a distant ancestor. He is very beloved of the Father, and for those who need to know more about that, they can ask the Lord as to who he really was. But in the book, I describe him as John, and that has continued to come to me many times. So in that experience that I had, actually quite early on when I found myself on the other side, he kind of explained as I was, I guess, for lack of a better word, I was putting up a little bit of resistance, having a little pity party of, woe is me, I'm on this other side, and I don't want to go back and everything. And part of it was, well, Julie, there are always reasons for why things happen. It's not coincidental you're here. And let me kind of show you and remind you some of the reasons you're here. And I don't go into a lot of detail on that in the book, but for the sake of where we are right now, that did occur early on in that experience, and then more than once throughout the experience to put it in context as to why I was being shown the things I was shown. And of course, it was mostly for my learning and my growth and my understanding to put in context of who I am as a daughter of God and my divine mission, and then also to give me the courage to come back and to do what I needed to do, knowing I was going to face significant health trials and other difficulties with so many circumstances that are just life, normal human experiences we have as being mortals. And then knowing towards the end of that, giving me another opportunity again to then make sure I was on board, I was clear on it, that I felt like I could really do it, that they reassured me, you're going to have all the support you need. You're going to have dark days. It's going to be hard, but we will be here whether you realize it or not. We will always be here. And when I say we, that's everything from, my immediate ancestors who have passed on, grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, things like that, to very distant relatives, to others who work in the Lord's kingdom.
Okay.
And due to the personal and sacred nature of that, I don't need to go into that. There have been some people that are like, well, when she talks like it's the Lord himself. Yeah, there are times. But the Lord, there's a structure to the Lord's church here on earth, just as there is in the heavens. And so, we have ministering angels and other things that help facilitate that work. And so sometimes that revelation comes through a dream or vision. Other times it's just information in my brain. Sometimes it's like a flashback to a memory I had. Sometimes it's given to me that day, But the things I talk about in the book are just things that pertain to those 2 days. Okay. Now, that was a long time ago. Right. So there were things I was shown then. There's no way you can remember all of that.
Right.
And so then I had reminder dreams and visions. And then as we go about our days, and this is no different for me than it is anyone else. We have good days, we have bad days. Some days are better than others. And sometimes we have more clarity than we have at other times.
Some people will say, process, some people will say, Julie, if somebody has a vision like this, should they just keep it to themselves or write a book? And most people, I would say a lot of people that have dreams don't write a book. What was the catalyst for you in making sure you wrote the book?
I would say that's such a personal decision as far as when you do and don't share. And I'm not going to judge anybody else on that, but in my experience, the majority of what I have experienced and still do experience, I don't share at all.
Right.
And I'm really not very good at writing a lot of it down, although the Spirit keeps telling me, write it down. We're counseled by a lot of people to keep journals and things like that are helpful for our own posterity.
Right.
As to why I chose to put it in a book, I kind of wrestled with that even after I came back from my experience. I wrestled with that for a long time. I was very, very sick, super, super sick for a good year and a half, that first year in particular, dealing with a lot of things. When I went into the hospital, on the YouTube video that we did, what I was told by the Spirit to put down and go public with was that I had a virus. Well, there's been a lot going around about what happened with me. I do deal with Lyme disease, but that was chronic Lyme disease that was not actually diagnosed until 2012. Although on my hospital records going in, I said to the doctors, I've been bitten by a tick. I think I have I think I have Lyme disease. They had that on the records. Mm-hmm. And then I had a virus in addition to that kind of set everything off.
Okay.
And so it was a virus that kind of triggered everything. That doesn't mean that there aren't some precursors and other things that play into that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it became multifaceted. Anybody that studies anything to do with viruses or bacteria or pathogens and those kinds of things and autoimmune, well, especially Lyme disease, then they were sending me to all kinds of specialists, and I still dealt with liver issues. I still do. Liver, kidney, they filter us.
Mm-hmm.
And those things went systemic, which then led to multiple autoimmune diseases. And so one of the many reasons I haven't gone into that is, for one, honestly, Kate, it's not anybody's business, right?
Right.
I didn't have to share any of this.
Sure.
I chose to share this, and but I want to be forthright and open with people, letting them know that I have nothing to hide.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing here to hide.
Right.
My hands are clean. They're open.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I choose not to share something doesn't mean I'm ashamed of it,
right,
or I'm afraid of it. It's that I either am trying to listen the best I can to what I think is going to keep me and my family safe, whether that's mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or physically safe, or trying to do the best I can to remember any kind of instructions I was given when I had my experience about what would be best for me going forward.
Well,
you know what I mean? Not get it convoluted. People could spend hours and hours and hours trying to dissect my health issues. And I say that because I spent until at least 2012 going with the majority of modern Western medicine, doing some alternative health care, and had just about every specialist arguing what the proper diagnosis would be to treat whatever autoimmune disease I had, and they completely were conflicting with each other.
Right.
Which kind of finally led me to being willing and open to trying different things that, have led to greater healing.
Right.
So that topic alone, people could go into, and anybody who's got one autoimmune knows what I'm talking about. You talk about 2, 3, 4. When they got to where they had diagnosed about half a dozen, I said, you know what, I'm done here. I don't need any more labels. I just want to get it fixed, because I remember being promised that one day I was going to find something that was really going to heal me, and I'm ready to get there.
Okay.
Anyway, so I don't know if that helps, but
yeah, it does, because I can understand.
Context,
I can understand why you would leave things out, why you wouldn't want to share some things. I don't tell my most intimate things on the air because it's my life. And people might not understand, right? And so when I
could write a whole book just on the health journey I've had.
Wow.
But that wasn't what I committed to do, and that's not. I don't feel compelled to do that.
Is it fair?
But I could.
Is it fair to? Is it fair to say that
some of the things I've been through?
Is it fair to say that you felt compelled to put it in a book? That you felt like that was the right thing to do?
Yeah, the little bit that I did, and then the original draft that I did with Chad Daybell, and he can verify this. There was a lot more that I put in, and I started to write it, and then there were things that I talked to Chad about putting in that he knows about me. Some of my experiences, everything to do with some of the background I had with experiences in college, the part that it talks about with perpetrators and things like that. At that point in time, my heart was willing to do whatever the Lord wanted me to do. And I even said to Chad, here's some of the things that have happened to me. Should I put them in writing? And some of them I wrote down. It was very therapeutic for me. Some of them I wrote down. And we, through the Spirit, discerned that was not something that needed to go to the world.
Okay.
And I'm grateful for his insight there and his second witness. But again, one, because it was nobody's business, and two, there was no need for it. Much of it being that those who read the message, they don't need to be narrowed down into, oh, she's just talking about this situation. It's supposed to be a broad message so the Spirit can witness and testify to each individual that reads that. However, the Lord wants them to get that message, and that's where the communication comes from, is through the Spirit, through the Lord.
Yes,
and so
I do.
Where there's vagueness or repetition or whatever, that was done purposefully.
Okay. We're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back. I want to talk a little bit about the tent cities, places of refuge, cities of light, things that have come up in the book. We'll address that, and then and I have more questions for you. So I really appreciate this. I'm talking with Julie Rowe, author of A Greater Tomorrow, right? A Greater Tomorrow. I don't have my note right back
tomorrow, and the time is now.
And the time is now. I didn't have it right in front of me. Sorry. We'll be right back.
You're trying to come up with another book title for me,
Yes, I am. Didn't you know you wanted to write another one? I'll be right back with Julie.
Yeah, I know.
Stay with us. Julie is the author of 2 near-death experience books. One is The Time Is Now, and the other one is A Greater Tomorrow, My Journey Beyond the Veil. And the books are very descriptive, and they're very good, actually. I really enjoyed the books. And I took from those books what I felt I should, and maybe about some times in the future that might be coming. And you've received a lot of backlash. For those that are just joining the show, you've received a lot of backlash. And it's so interesting to me. I can't quite figure that out because there's a lot of near-death experience books out there. And some that are even more specific than yours. And I thought, this is so strange. But I think, one of the main messages that people are talking about are the fact that in the state of Utah, you saw tent cities. You saw things spring up as we enter into this sort of 7-year kind of trials and tribulations, that you saw tent cities coming up, and you saw cities of light and things like that. Did you want to comment on any of that?
Yes, just I appreciate you saying that. Just that it's not unique to Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because when I was on Mill Crenshaw and then Steve Minton's show and your show, because
mm-hmm.
they are in Utah and Idaho, obviously it's
right.
a larger audience there.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw those tent cities all over the world.
Right.
More of them in the United States, because I live in the United States and I have friends and family in the United States. So, it pertains to me personally.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lord loves all of his children. So there are these places of safety and these tent cities that are all over the place. I mean, there's tent cities right now that are going on. Now, what I saw was a bit different than obviously some of the things that we see. But it's not a far cry. It's not a far stretch for people to see if they're seeing some of that stuff that's gone on in the past, or we look at something that happened in some of the past times when people, for whatever reason, were unable to have food or clothing or shelter due to mm-hmm. job loss or whatever, and they congregate in groups
mm-hmm.
in tents and things like that, so they can survive. It's
for
a
safety.
United group
mm-hmm.
effort for survival. It's just kind of a common sense thing, actually.
Sure. And I totally get that. That's why when I was reading those things, it didn't scare me. I just thought, okay, that could be something that happens, because I've had many guests on the show, Julie, that have talked about from New York, from Wall Street, that have talked about the impending economic collapse. And we all know that that's where we're headed. I think somebody would have to have their head in the sand if they didn't know that was coming. And so you're addressing kind of the fallout of some of those things happening, whether it be disasters, whether it be, which we know we're due, right? We talk about this all the time in the state of Utah and California and everywhere else. And then you have these sort of spiritual aspects of things that could happen, things that you saw. If I were you and I had this type of near-death experience, I would probably want people to know so they could be prepared. I would want people to understand what I had seen. And so I think for me I was grateful that you actually wrote it down, that you said, hey, this is what could happen here, and this is what I saw, as sort of a warning, but also a preparedness. But there are people that took that preparedness to say a whole new level. So maybe threw common sense out the window and then decided that.
And for the record, never once have I ever told anybody to cash out any investment.
Right.
I have never said to go do it. I've actually never given anybody advice on their finances, and I've had a lot of people ask.
Mm-hmm,
and
sure.
My husband and I did have. We do have experience in the financial background, but I'm not an expert, and I never once have ever said anything to anybody about, and I'm very careful, even with the few very close to me, that I've shared very small portions of what we've even done.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that I think there are people that, like anything, they hear a message wherever they hear it from, and they make their own choices,
mm-hmm.
and who am I to say whether or not they should or shouldn't do something? That's not my place.
You know what?
Just like they shouldn't say what I should or shouldn't do.
Right.
What I have had some people say is, well, everything from, blaming me for people doing things, and then the other end of the spectrum, people looking to me like they think I'm some amazing person and,
mm-hmm.
and that I've got this following. And what I want to make very clear of, while I own my words, I own my actions, I own what I've said, what I've done, I own it.
Mm-hmm.
In no way does that mean that I'm conforming to the idea that I in any way take credit for anything good that comes. I give all credit of good that comes to the Lord. And in no way am I accepting any kind of blame from anyone that decides to do something that would be contrary to what would be prudent, that would be contrary to what we've been given as far as some, I guess, whatever a smart idea would be, wise counsel from those that we seek advice from, whether that's our prophets and apostles and church leaders or our financial advisor or whatnot. I'm not going to take credit, and I'm also not going to take blame. So whenever something happens, whether it's on a personal level in somebody's life or going forward on a national or international scale, I want people to remember that.
Right.
I'm not going to take credit. I'm not going to take blame, but I will own it. And there's a big difference between owning what we say and then acting like we're accountable for good or ill that comes.
Right.
Having said that, I know I'm going to get some more heat for that because people are like, I've already gotten it. Oh, she's prideful, this and that. No, this is not a pride thing. I got some pride. We all do. We're all working on that. But when I say I'm not going to take blame, I really mean that.
Right.
If someone,
I appreciate that.
I have to be careful because I don't want to come across snotty, but if somebody makes a stupid choice, am I to blame for that?
Well, if people can read the scriptures, right? People can read the Holy Bible and then react the way they're going to react. I mean, I don't know that it's anyone's fault. It's just the person taking on how they feel and doing and acting out and doing those things that they feel appropriate. And really, they shouldn't be blaming anyone for that. I think anytime you read a book, you're pretty much accountable for what you walk away with too. The other thing too is that you were really kind of attacked for giving out time frames. What's interesting about that is I never heard you say any dates. I heard people ask you, well, geez, what did you look like in the vision? And so you gave sort of a general, well, this is what I look like, or my husband's hair wasn't quite gray, really gray yet. And people were taking that for time frames. And what's interesting about that too, can I just mention this, is that nobody knows whether or not that will happen in the spring or the winter or whatever. But I always think it's funny that they'll condemn you even though they don't even know or it hasn't happened yet. So maybe it will. Right. I mean, there's no way to know, but people automatically jump to that conclusion where, what were your thoughts on that? I want to get your thoughts.
There's a lot going on there. We're human beings, and we want to know what's going to happen to us so we can plan it, so we can avoid pain. So they take my words, whether they're in the written or spoken, whatever venue, and then you've got people that came. I was specifically guided by the Spirit not to have people record. Definitely not video recording, definitely not audio. That doesn't mean people didn't do it. Well, so before this new stuff hit, during the summer, then I was prompted to get on my website and elsewhere and ask people to send me copies of their notes as well as any recordings that they did, giving them an opportunity to come forward and kind of let me know that they had done that, even though we'd requested not.
Right.
Some did it accidentally, not knowing they weren't supposed to. They'd not heard that message. Most people, if they'd read my website and had followed the guidelines, they knew, and they did it anyway. I am grateful for the recordings. I haven't had a chance to listen to them, but I do know the guidelines I was given. And, for instance, like in the Rexburg event, which was the last one I did in July, and I'm going to reiterate, that is the last in-person group setting speaking engagement I had, and it's the last one I will have, unless there's something unforeseen that I don't know about. And that doesn't mean I'm done speaking. Okay,
right.
People have misconstrued that. I'm on your radio show today speaking. What it means is I'm not going to fly back to Chicago and have some big group meeting in Chicago with, open to the public or something.
Okay.
But like at that event, there were questions asked. For instance, a friend of mine now, he's become a friend this year, Hector Sosa, who came up with a book, also published by my publisher, Charitable of Spring Creek Books, about his dreams and visions. Well, I haven't been on Facebook. I don't know what Hector is or isn't saying on there. The question was asked similar, something to the effect of about Hector's book, and I've endorsed it on the back. I stand by that. Everything written in Hector's book, I was shown, whether it's about him and how he describes it. Now, the verbiage, that's his verbiage, okay? But what he was shown, I was shown about him. He speaks the truth that way. The things he describes happening, even some of the verbiage that is identical, not all of it. Now, anything else outside of that, I don't know, because I'm not participating in that. So people take that and then they run with it.
Right.
Or anything else. I've had 20 or 30 people say, have you read The Harbinger? I have not. I was specifically kind of guided not to do that. I can now see why. So that with clean hands, I can say, you guys, I had nothing to do with this.
Right. Right.
I have nothing to do with this. Now, what I do know about the Shemitah or the blood moons, I haven't shared purposefully.
Right.
Purposely. I will say there was significance, and there still is significance. Maybe it's not what people were putting in the box and what they tried to make it appear to be, but there was definitely a shift and a change that occurred during those days.
Right.
And there is definitely significance to those dates. But I have never, ever said anything about that. I have never said what it was, and even beforehand, I never even said, other than their significance. And it was only when people press the issue, and I would say, there is some significance, go ahead and study it out.
If you're just
not even naming names,
right?
You know, this is the most I've ever named names.
Right.
The Harbinger and Hector Sosa.
Right.
So.
If you're just joining us, I'm talking to Julie Rowe, author of The Time Is Now and A Greater Tomorrow, and she's received some backlash. She's back on the show to address this, and you can actually listen to her original podcast, and she lays out some of the things that she saw in some of our previous shows, and you can check those out on SoundCloud, The Kate Dalley Show. They're also on Julie's site. And Julie's site is?
JulieRowePrepare.com.
JulieRowePrepare.com.
Just type in Julie Rowe, it should come up.
Okay. And now, why, what's interesting to me, and this has always been sort of an interesting feat of, I think, just the psychology of man, is people, there are some people out there that are almost angered by the things written in the book. And what's interesting about that is they haven't come to pass or not come to pass, so we don't really know if they're going to happen or if they're not going to happen. Yet people are immediate to have this sort of anger towards it. Why is that in your mind's eye? Why is that? Why are you getting?
Why do we get angry about anything? Sometimes we get angry because it hurts us, maybe emotionally or on some other level. Sometimes it's because we feel threatened. Sometimes it's because we're just angry.
Fear.
I can't speak for other people. I can tell you I've worked through some of my own anger issues regarding the message over the last decade, because I have gotten angry knowing that some of this stuff is potentially going to happen, because I don't like to think about awful things happening to anyone. And so then it's pause for reflection. Okay, if I'm getting angry, and angry is a negative emotion, and my belief system says that anger is not of the light, then where is it coming from? And we trace it back to the source. That might give us a little more clarity on trying to understand why people would get so riled up over something that could be seemingly a rather simple message from a middle-aged mom who just wanted to share her experience and her testimony about something that happened to her.
Right. Things that she saw.
What is the threat? That's what keeps coming to my mind, is what is the threat? Is it really because there's some middle-aged mom of 3 kids living in the Midwest? Oops, it's out, Kate. I live in the Midwest. That's okay, because somebody else put that on the internet. Is it really such a threat? Well, you tell me, Kate. I'm not the other source, am I? Right. There are so many other people, so many voices. I think it's a collective whole of the voices that are coming forward at this time, and there will be more. That I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There will come a point in time where there will be no denying who our master is. And so this kind of forces the issue for some more people where maybe they've been able to turn a blind eye or put the mufflers on and go, I can't hear you. I don't want to read anything. I don't want to see anything. Yeah.
Right.
And then it's almost getting in their face to the point that you either have to turn a blind eye or absolutely turn away from it, And so we're just getting closer to some of that. And did I seek to do that? No, that was never my intention. It never has been. It never will be. My intention is to share and testify, and yes, to warn, but the overall message is to have hope and faith in the Lord, and trust Him. And as we're doing that, it doesn't matter where we are, whether we're here or Europe or Australia or Hawaii or in South Africa,
Right.
If we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, what's the worry?
I totally get that. One of the things I got out of your book, to tell you the truth, is the fact that people focus on preparing with food. And this is people all over the world. They're focused on preparing with food. Yet camping equipment, and if we were to lose our homes to an earthquake or flooding or all of these natural disasters that, by the way, are occurring right now, that if you lost your home, would you have something to live in? And I thought, what practical advice that I hadn't really concentrated on or thought about previously. I thought it was great.
Our own government, if you go in and look at like the emergency disaster things that the government suggests. Now, I'm not saying we should take our cues from the government, but I'm just saying if they are even telling us that it's a good idea to have a 72-hour kit and water and purification tablets or a filter,
and they've prepared
at least a temporary tent and temporary shelter, then, I mean,
maybe listen.
It's not just Mormons. In fact, the canneries, yes, have gotten busy, especially in Utah. But, you know, I was at the cannery in Arizona like over a year ago. It was last, I think it was July or August or September of 2014 in Arizona, and talking to the people there, and they were a little disheartened at how many people hadn't really been coming in. It had been dwindling. And look at the change in a year. Well, the feedback I've gotten is, there's a lot of members of the church of the LDS faith that have gotten food storage. But guess what? There's a lot more of the non-members of the church that know we have the canneries, and they are coming in and getting the food.
Right, because people are feeling this. They're feeling something coming, and I think rightfully so. I think that we would be idiotic not to understand those feelings of, you might want to get more groceries. You might want to stock up on some things. Some things may be coming. If the dollar plummets, buy things right now while the dollar is decent. I mean, this is just practical advice, right?
What's it tell you if you've got Sam's Club and Costco offering, food storage in a bucket?
There you go.
I mean, they're capitalizing on it, apparently.
There you go.
Apparently, Kate, I'm not the only one making money off this doomsday message.
Right. We'll talk about that. I want to talk about that when we come back. That's been another accusation, and this one cracks me up because it just does. We're going to come right back and talk to Julie more, and she's going to be joining us for the first half hour of the next hour as well. Hi there. Welcome back to the Kate Dalley Show. Oh, wow. The time is 1:56. It's going by fast. I've got author Julie Rowe on with me. This is a real exclusive interview with Julie. We were both in an article that landed in the Washington Post and the Drudge Report and the Huffy. It was all over the place. And we were kind of giving it a chuckle because the article was so funny. It said so many things that we hadn't said, like the end of the world was coming in September. We were fearing it. I'm on the line with Julie. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Kate.
Hi there.
Good to be back again.
Yeah.
I love being on with you, by the way.
It's fun.
You are great to listen to and a lot of fun.
Well, thanks.
On and off the air.
Thank you.
I wish we were neighbors.
Ditto. She'd be a great neighbor. Julie would be a great neighbor. We're going to come back in the next half hour. We're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about some of the things. And we can also hit some of those things in the book, too. But there was so much here as far as controversy. And that's why, I asked Julie to come back on the show, and thankfully she said yes, because there was so much to address here. I saw a lot of negative comments, and I thought, my gosh, are people just going crazy over this? And really it was a near-death experience that you chose to share that I actually gained a lot from, and I still live my life very normally, but I gained a lot from your book, and I have to say that. I thought it was just a great book. Both books, actually. They're both really, really good, and I just wish people would take from that and maybe use it to help themselves. But we're going to come back. We're going to talk about more with author Julie Rowe. You ready for that, Julie? Will you come back in the next half hour?
Yes, and
okay.
I just want to let people know, I know that you live a normal life, because how many times we play phone tag as we're taking our kids to and from sporting activities or other stuff,
Many.
Like, I got to call you back, Kate.
It's so true. That is so true. We'll be right back. More with Julie Rowe on the Kate Dalley Show on the Fox News Channel. Stay with us. Hi there. Welcome back to the Kate Dalley Show. The time is 2:07. Glad you're listening in today. You can actually catch this show on SoundCloud, the Kate Dalley Show, when we're finished today. And boy, it's really fun having Julie Rowe in, author Julie Rowe. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Kate.
Hi there.
Good to be back again. Made it for another commercial break.
Welcome back. And Julie is the author of The Time Is Now and also A Greater Tomorrow. And both books have certainly, she's gotten her fair share of comments either way. And she actually talked about these books back in, I think it was January, March, back in that time. We had her on the show, and it was so fun to be able to have you, Julie, and to be able to talk about these things. And, we like to break these barriers the Fox News channel. It's kind of fun. But I'll tell you, one of the big questions about the books, because you've gotten a lot of, I don't even know, kind of some opposition.
Mixed feedback.
Yes, mixed feedback. And there's a lot of near-death experience books and a lot written by LDS people, but for some reason, this one. And one of them was that the church came out and they made a statement. And the statement was actually a really generic statement, one they've made over and over again to many people, including Bruce R. McConkie and different people within the LDS Church, where they've said, look, we separate ourselves from these things because it's not coming from the first presidency or what have you. And so they always say that.
Not official church doctrine.
Yeah, they always say that. It's very generic. They've been doing it for years. It wasn't directed just at you. So
I would tell you, I was really glad that they made that statement because people needed to hear it. Mm-hmm. There were some people that I believe took things out of context, or still taking things out of context, and are placing value maybe on some of my words out of context. And there is a difference between official church doctrine, someone's experiences, someone's own personal witness and testimony and their experience and what they share, and official church doctrine.
Right.
If somebody wants to study what that means, you can go to lds.org. It spells it out. What is official church doctrine? And I'm glad they made that clarification, because there are far too many of us that don't know what constitutes official church doctrine. And knowing official church doctrine is important, and it's going to become increasingly important. Now, I love also that they put that it was my personal experience, and that it may or may not distort church doctrine. I'm glad they said that, because, again, it's not church doctrine. Now, that doesn't mean that, in my opinion, I think anything I've written does not go in and fit into church doctrine. Okay, there's a difference there. People are going to still misconstrue my words, but I hope people hear that I truly mean that I fully support that and know that to be true. That is a true order of how the Lord's church works. Now, when we read a book from anyone, whether it's a member of the Quorum of the 12 or First Presidency or any member or non-member of the LDS faith, even if it's sold in Deseret Book or Siegel Book or anywhere it's sold, if that book is written, and even though it has true doctrine, if it's written by that individual, that book is not considered church doctrine.
Right. It's a great point.
Although it's included, even if it comes from a church leader, there are specific books that have been designated to include official church doctrine. And those are our scriptures and some other things that are listed on LDS.org. And for them not to come out and say that, then the church would have been in the wrong, because if there are people that are doing something that needs correction, and specifically this was designated as an inner office memo to institute and seminary teachers. Now, I'm not in an area where there's a high percentage of those classes being taught, but apparently there was enough of it going on that they felt the need to at least make notice of it, to make sure that on that inner office memo, that message was getting through to those institute and seminary teachers, and probably some of those families that were involved in whatever it was that was going on.
Right.
Now, what that says to me is that the church cares very deeply about each and every one of its members, particularly the youth, and they want to make sure that they have a sure foundation on the basic tenets of the doctrine of the gospel, and not getting off into these tangents, because people will take my book, and depending on where they are in their lives and their faith and all of that goes into it, they will then interpret it according to their own eyes, ears, thoughts, impressions, and experiences.
Right.
And then if they were to go and teach that, that's just not okay. It's just not.
Okay. And
within our families, that's a different deal. You know what I mean?
True.
And that goes back to the I own it thing, I know what we're doing here. I made a comment earlier about I'm not going to take any credit and I won't take any blame, and I went so far as to say even people's stupid decisions. Well, that maybe doesn't sound very nice and Christ-like, but what is stupid to one person may look stupid to another. Some people might think it's stupid to get food storage. Other people might think it's stupid not to.
Right. Okay, fair enough. Right. Now, people thought that the church came to you, Julie, in person, and said that the hierarchy of the LDS Church, and said, we don't want you speaking in our buildings, which didn't happen. This never happened.
I have had I've met with every single bishop and stake president and members of stake presidencies. I've made it a practice in all of my adult years to always make sure that they know who I am, and I of my own desire, go in and meet them, even way before I ever had this experience, and definitely in the last couple of years. And I've had 4 different stake presidents since 2004, and every single one that I have worked with since the books have come out are aware. Now I had a stake president for a very short time in Arizona that I gave the book to really right before I left, and I was in the middle of writing the second book as I left and moved back to the Midwest. Mm-hmm. I don't know that individual. I met with him on one occasion in person, and it was brought to my attention some things to do with the handbook. Again, that's available to those who are willing to seek it out. Mm-hmm. The official statements by the church in the handbook of the church, and the main message was wanting to make sure that definitely no book sales were going on in church buildings. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And so
well,
that
their status. They have a status. They have
a. And then when I moved to the Midwest shortly mm-hmm. after that, that was after I spoke in Mesa. I did not decide on any of the venues for these events, and those were all done by inspiration from people who volunteered their time, money, and services to put those venues together. Mm-hmm. I just helped facilitate, and the Spirit led those people and guided those people. And then, of course, at some point along that journey for each one of those venues, I agreed to it as the Spirit told me it was to be. And mm-hmm. so, again, I don't take any credit or blame for that, and I'm still thankful for those people. The one in Mesa was an interstate building that was used by the public, and the individual there, we did sell a few books, but only because they asked me to bring some. Mm-hmm. And I think we only had a box of 40 or something. Other than that, I've done no book signings. My publisher did hold a specific book signing event where I only spoke for about 25 minutes in Springville in November of 2014, right after my second book came out. And that was specifically advertised as a book signing event, not a speaking engagement. And he paid for and rented out a community center in Springville, Utah. Mm-hmm. That was a book signing event. Right. Other than that, the only time that, other than a little bit in Mesa, the only other time we've sold books at the actual event was after Logan, and a kind gentleman offered his health food store for us to come in and do a book signing there. Mm-hmm. And that was after I spoke in Logan Tabernacle, and it was a block and a half away. Right.
And the church has a certain status that they have to maintain, and there's certain rules to that. And of course,
like tax exempt. You don't want to be having book tours and signings.
Exactly.
That's one of the many reasons.
One of the big questions, Julie, is, in this one probably makes me laugh, actually, more than anything, is why does she charge for the book? And I'm thinking, is she supposed to pay for all of us to read this book? I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. You have to pay for the publishing. Mm-hmm. You've got to pay to get that done. Authors are not rolling in the cash if you understood how much they make per book. Mm-hmm. It's not one of those venues or ventures. And what cracks me up about this is that you should have just given this for free. Well, I can't even imagine that. And most everybody that writes a book, including the First Presidency LDS Church, charges for it. So it just that comment just kind of makes me laugh. I don't know if people are understanding that.
Right. Well, and there's production costs. Mm-hmm. Even when we did the ebook and the Audible, mm-hmm. Chad Daybell's daughter Emma Daybell did the Audible books for us. We had more than one company that wanted to take the book rights, and they wanted, mm-hmm. and we're talking an international company that have wanted to put it in Spanish and other languages, and that have wanted to do the Audible books so they could have it, quote unquote, mm-hmm. professionally done. Chad Abel's daughter Emma did a marvelous job on them, and it was done in a very, very humble setting mm-hmm. with good quality, but a lot of labor of love there to get that to happen. And I can tell you the hours that were put in and what occurred there. Mm-hmm. It was done in the Lord's direction, and it would have cost a whole lot more for people if we'd gone a different route. We have kept this as affordable as possible, given the direction we've been given. And no, there's not going to be a free ebook. Sorry, but
well, it's just kind of funny because anybody's near-death experience or anybody writes a book on anything, that's why we have Deseret Book and Siegel Book. They sell them. I mean, it'd just be so. I've never known anyone in history that said, "Oh, I'm going to furnish a book for all of you Americans so that you can read it." It's just it's preposterous to think that.
I don't know why I care at this point that people are going to misconstrue my words, but I'll just say that I know they will because I already have. But I don't want to sound bad when I say this, but really, there is no amount of money that can be worth what I've experienced, both good and ill on the whole spectrum.
Right.
No amount of money.
Right.
But I can tell you that I make a whole lot less than the stores do. They're selling them a whole lot less than the other people involved in this process. And, there's numbers floating around out there. I don't ask other people what they make off of what they do. It's not anybody's business. But I also have nothing to hide. Part of it is I don't really know because it's not been a part of my focus. But I do know that based on maybe some past work experience I have and some of the skills I have, I could be making far more money per hour because I'm kind of in the negative.
Right.
And maybe after this most recent royalty check, and I kind of look at all my expenses between traveling and things like that, websites and all that. That's not even taking into account the hours I spend. And that's not patting myself on the back. That's just the reality of the situation. This is a service.
Yeah.
But I am now starting. Some of it'll eventually we will start to make some money because people have asked, well, what is she doing with all of it? Well, getting the word out, and I have been able to get some preparations for myself and for some other people, which leads me into the topic that I talked to you briefly about right before we got on this call, and that is that for about a year now, I have had thoughts and impressions and feelings that there were key people the Lord was going to connect me with to help us do some kind of charitable organization. And so I do know that we are at that point in time now that we are doing that. So maybe that'll put some people at rest a little bit, help them sleep a little easier and judge me less because, they want to know what's happening with quote unquote all this money.
Right.
Well, I'll tell them honestly, some of it I used to buy my $1,000 trailer that my husband's going to build with plywood so we can transport things. Also, those are good to have if you want to do yard work, but I'm just saying. Anyway, it's not a travel trailer. Some people have had a good time with that. I'm out buying RVs or something. And, there's something wrong with that, by the way, folks. If you have the money for an IV, hey, go for it. I don't. I bought a simple trailer. I put that on my website, and it's funny how many people just assumed that it was some grand, wonderful thing. No, the guy wanted $1,400 for it on Craigslist, and we paid $1,000. And fortunately, I'm married to a man who knows how to paint and build.
Right.
And he's gonna make it out what we need it to be. Let's see.
Let me cut in here really quick.
Bought some more food storage.
Let me cut in here really quick. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Julie Rowe, author Julie Rowe, 2 books, The Time Is Now and A Greater Tomorrow. And it was a near-death experience she had, 10 years ago? 10, 11 years ago?
11 years ago on the 28th of September.
Okay.
So we just came across my 11-year anniversary of my change.
Okay.
I was going to say crossing over, but that sounds weird.
Right. But you felt compelled, and you felt like this was something you were supposed to do, was write it in I don't want to put words in your mouth, so stop me if I am. Write this in a book for people to share in this. And many people have done this. Many, many, many people. And nobody's ever furnished that book for free. And I even bought Visions of Glory, and I've bought some others, and I find them very intriguing, to tell you the truth. And I think that, in my relationship with you, you've been nothing but transparent. You've been nothing but, this is what I felt. This is what I did. I felt like I needed to share it. And I'm sure if you didn't feel that way, if you felt that this was an absolute private event, that you would have kept it to yourself, because this wasn't something that you asked for. This wasn't a position that you wanted to be in. And I distinctly know that about you. So I want to share that with people listening, was that this isn't something that was comfortable to you at all. And these speaking engagements are few and far between.
Kate can say that. you say that, Kate, because you've seen the other side. More of my personality is coming out on this show, and people go, "He is so un-Christ-like." And I'll say, "Yeah, you're right, you guys. I have been trying to tell you I'm a very weak vessel." Kate would know. We've had lots of off-the-air conversations, and she's seen my attitude where I get ornery. But having said that, I will tell you, Kate, you know that my motive is love. It really is, and concern, and wanting to just help brothers and sisters and all of us, as many as possible. And that goes with this Charitable Foundation. I don't even have the name of it yet because I've just had clarity in the last couple of weeks, and even just over the weekend, that the time was now for us to do this. So just kind of stay tuned. As it comes together, I have a network of people I've been working with, and we'll have, some things more finalized in the coming days and weeks. But it is about love, and what I see is things like children who are hungry and cold and needing hats, gloves, scarves, coats, boots, shoes, socks. Backpacks for people that can't afford it, hygiene kits, feminine supplies, toothpaste, toothbrushes, things. We're talking about the homeless here, and that's no different than any other homeless foundation,
Right.
So we've got that coming, and really it is love. So
that's really the message.
I guess it was all premeditated, wasn't it, Kate?
Well, I think it's the message that I think when you put these things in a book, and I've read books like them, and so, and I like that because they're somewhat similar, and I know that people are having the same types of experiences, which actually makes me feel better about those experiences. But I sense a lot of fear in people, and that's why maybe they're going to sort of throw knives at the messenger because maybe they don't want to hear this message. I don't know. Maybe it's too scary. Maybe people get nervous about it. I don't know. But I will say,
I guess there's a reason that saying has been passed down, don't kill the messenger.
Right.
I'm not the first messenger, and I won't be the last one. Well, and sometimes there's similar threads, similar messages that continue to have arrows and stones being thrown.
Right.
That is, anytime you testify of Christ, you're going to make some enemies. Anytime you testify of deity of any kind, God the Father, you're going to make some enemies. Anytime you testify of anything of the light, you're going to make some enemies.
Well,
I'm okay with that. I own that.
I want to say this, that as LDS people, if you're not LDS and you're listening to this show, and we usually don't get into the LDS topics so heavy as we are today. So this is sort of an unusual show. But I will say this, if you're not LDS, we as LDS people believe in dreams and visions, and that people can have these things, and that you can take from them what comes to you and what you feel about those things and how they pertain to you. But we do believe in those things. That's what, and it's
one of our 13 articles of faith.
Yes, it's one of the confounds of our religion. So to me, it makes me kind of laugh a little bit when people get a little negative, because I'm thinking they don't know that it's not true, yet they're ready to condemn the messenger. That's what cracks me up the most. And I'm sure there have been people throughout history that have gone through this. You've never professed to be a prophet. You've never professed for people to follow you. It makes you even uncomfortable. You've always said, don't follow me, but yet people say to you, well, you just wanted followers. And it's almost maddening, because you've never said that. That's actually been the opposite of your message. So
it's almost like the more they say it, the more they want to do it.
Right.
Maybe if I said, hey, everybody follow me, then they'd actually start doing their own thing. That reverse psychology.
Counterintuitive.
But here's what came to my mind. And, we're talking to an LDS population and non-LDS population, as this goes to other parts of the country. The Lord is no respecter of persons. He loves all of his children. There's no elite group. And yet we each have a plan for us. And it was designed in the councils of heaven, and we have agency. Now, where there is agency, we have a choice every day, multiple times a day, how we want to proact, to be proactively or reactively. And we could have a whole conversation for hours and hours just about that topic. And it's amazing to me, like you brought up earlier when you studied the psychology behind it, because it does not make sense. It's not a logical thing. And so a lot of people are reacting on emotion. Well, there are a lot of triggers that are going off, whether people realize it or not. Emotional triggers, mental, emotional, physical triggers that are going on. And as people are sensing things, even on a subconscious level, and we have all this energy about us and communication going on subconsciously throughout the world, there's so much more that goes into it than what meets the eye. And we could spend hours and hours and hours trying to debate so-called truths of the gospel or otherwise, or scientific truths or what have you. When it comes right down to it, the Lord expects us to do our part, to step up to the plate, and without charity, we're nothing. So he wants us ultimately to have that gift, which is the greatest gift from God, which can only come from him through the atonement, and that is to love one another, to love our brothers and sisters, no matter where we come from, what walk of life. And the more I try to seek after that gift, the more I realize I have a long way to go. Because as we seek that, then the Lord gives us opportunity to come across people in our lives that can say and do and act in ways that will test us in our ability to show and truly live a charitable life. And I don't mean a free handout kind of charity. I mean truly loving with pure intent, without any kind of ulterior motive, just because that individual, just like me, is a divine son or daughter of God, with all of our weaknesses and our strengths. And we don't love each other in spite of. In fact, often we love each other because of our weaknesses. And while I, as the messenger, am a stumbling block for some, for other people, they will look to me and they will say, hey, you know what? With as flawed, as imperfect as she is, if the Lord has given her the message that he loves her, well, of course he loves me. Of course he loves me. And what does that say for the whole human family in whatever realm or dimension? It says to me that we have an infinite, eternal atonement, and we have unlimited potential. Who are we to limit the Lord? Because he does not limit us. As to who can or can't have certain experiences or why they do or don't. And I am just grateful for that testimony, because it gives me hope, not only for myself, but for this world that we live in. There is no end of the world. We're in a transition. We're going to go through some hard things, but we've been through hard things before. We're in a transition, and we have some incredibly beautiful days ahead of us. But we can have those beautiful days today. We don't need to wait till tomorrow to decide that we're going to be happy or to have joy. But there are certain recipes for those things. They don't just happen. We don't wake up overnight and go, wow, I have joy in my life.
Right. There was a question. There was a question, Julie, on should we be sharing such deep personal things and things that happen to us? And I would have to answer that actually with you, is that many people disclose deep personal things that happen to them all the time in books. And we get to learn from those people that are willing to do that. And I think you've also kept a lot to yourself that you don't share. And I want people to understand that. There's a lot there that you don't share, but you shared what you felt was appropriate to share in these books, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. People really have no idea what I haven't shared. You don't know what you don't know.
Right. And many people have. That's why,
you look at anyone who's had an experience, right? Just as we personally reflect in our own lives, what we've gone through in our lives, from our greatest joys to our greatest sorrows and our greatest pains, back again to our greatest joys, how much of that have we ever truly shared with another human being? One, let alone millions.
Right.
Come on, folks.
Right.
So are we going to pretend that one Julie Rowe is going to write down her whole life experience, or even a 2-day event in full detail, and spill all of it out to millions of people? No.
Right.
I'm going to put what I know I'm supposed to put. If there's more to come, okay. But I've said things over the radio, even now, that aren't in the books.
Right.
So that makes me think again about those people that are like, it's supposed to go to the whole world. Well, it's funny because the first time I was criticized of that was before Book 2 came out, and it was way before the very people who criticized me for not having a PDF to have it go to the world mocked it and said, oh, yeah, right. If God loves all his children who can go to the world, then, you'd make it available to all the world, not some small publishing company, yada, yada, yada. And I thought, isn't that interesting that the Lord can take even those very people who are mocking and criticizing and get that message out to the world, to Indonesia and Malaysia and other places, when otherwise maybe they never would have ever heard of me at all.
Right. Well, it's interesting how we sort of eat our own. Well, it's just it is interesting that we dogpile on our own. I always found that very fascinating as the human experience. But I also wanted to hit on one last thing is that energy work, those types of things have come up in conversation. I had Dr. Brad Nelson on the show who wrote a best-selling book called Emotion Code, where he talked about the very same thing. He talked about, and I know that you know him, he talked about all of these things, about how we feel emotions, and they sort of transpire into things that we feel in our body. I don't know that that's such a leap. Right. I don't know that that's something that you would go, oh, no, of course.
No,
I mean,
they've actually, there's actual science behind it, hard science. Just because the scientists haven't come out and published it doesn't mean it hasn't happened. They have been doing studies on that. I've had a few people send me things here and there through text or email in the last year about studies in Europe and different places about genetics and things to do. Even there was a recent article, somebody said, and I need to be careful because it was just literally somebody emailed it to me or texted me, and it had to do with they've found out that there are some things passed down from those that experienced the Nazi concentration camps and some of the genetics that came down with things there. There is hard science behind it. Just because we don't have the proof in black and white right now in front of our faces doesn't mean that it's not legit.
Well, we always fear things we don't understand.
Too. I have great respect for him. He's world-renowned, and he's gotten a bad rap from a lot of people. But what an amazing person who is on the Lord's errand doing the best he can. A perfect man? No, but he's pretty good. And and I consider him a friend because I've seen him work with people. I've seen his program work for people. Does that mean it's the only way? No. I don't use magnets. I don't even, then that's not to say there's something wrong with that. But the magnets or the muscle testing, those kind of things, those are tools that people can use, no different than a compass or what some might know as like a Liahona in the Book of Mormon or Urim and Thummim. That's what the Spirit's made known to me and my understanding. And really, it's to help us learn to discern. And there is a lot of counterfeit out there.
But I think the message,
I think different than anything else in this world. I think, you have truth, and then you've got like 99.9% of the false out there. So is it even energy work? Well, energy work gets a bad rap because it's lumped in with a bunch of occult stuff. There's some dark stuff involved in it. That's not what I'm part of.
Right. Well, I think the message is we always fear what we don't know, what we don't understand, and there is some of that. And the other thing is this. It isn't something I've done, but I'm not there to condemn it because I don't know. I don't know if it works or it doesn't work. Yeah. So I think that we need to sort of rein ourselves in a little bit and stop being so judgmental about everything that we don't know about and condemning it before we know about it. And so I think that's one of the messages,
I love how... Yeah, sorry, I interrupt you. I love how people, there's another one that I've come across, here and there. I know it's all over the place, but people just assuming that I also do this energy work for money. They're wrong. Just because I said I worked as an emotion code practitioner, or I was a certified emotion code practitioner, or I talked about it in my book, doesn't mean I'm working with clients every day, folks.
Right. And, so, there's just so much.
Should I write a book about that one?
Right. There's so much that we could go into, Julie. And, we're kind of short on time, but I do want to say this, though. I think the message of the books was actually really helpful to me. And I took from it what hit me the hardest and some things that I was sort of reminded about that I thought, oh, yeah, that's something to think about. I was grateful you wrote them. I was grateful you put them in print so that I could have those moments of clarity. So thank you for that. No, I didn't go sell everything I own or indulge in just kind of being weird about it. I think that you take these things in just like I would any book, and you say, what's in it for me? And then you step away. Yeah. I don't know why people would make more of it than it is. And I think that on the other side of that is that there was a lot there to learn from. And I'm actually glad you shared it. And I think if you could sort of sum up in a few minutes what you would like people to know, I would do that, because I think people are listening and they want to know, well, what should I be preparing for, and what do you see, and what have you learned out of this?
Well, I have to tell you, my brain's getting caught on that weird word.
Oh, no, yeah,
it's a trigger word for me and a bunch of other people.
Sure, sorry.
Who am I to say what's weird or not, right? I've got people that have that I've met in my life, and I'm like, oh, they're a little different.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm reminded, I'm like, wait a minute.
Right. We're all that way.
I've been accused of some things myself. What's right for me isn't necessarily right for you or someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But what I can witness and testify, the same I have before, which is that I know the Lord loves us. He loves us individually. He knows us by name. And He is a source of all light and truth and knowledge. And where we have a question or a concern or any kind of desire in our lives, we can ask Him. And not only can we ask Him, but I encourage us to do that because that's what He wants us to do. He's standing there with open arms and open heart, and He wants us to come and where possible, get on bended knee. But, you can be in your car driving, and you can pray, but with your eyes open, or, don't close your eyes when you're driving. You can pray wherever you are, and you can ask for that guidance, and it will come to us as we need it, when we need it, how we need it, as the Lord knows that we need it, and as He knows us individually. And how it comes to me may be different from how it comes to other people.
Sure.
I don't always get it in dreams and visions. In fact, the majority of what I get is more of a thought or an impression or a feeling in my heart. That is where most of the information comes to me. It's not like I'm shown everything as this live video feed. And I've had people say, you're so lucky you don't have to have faith. You just know what's coming. And I thought, they do not understand. It all requires faith.
Sure.
And the more we act on that faith, the more the Lord knows He can trust us, and He knows that we're ready to handle, and He gives us more. And He doesn't lighten our load. Other than, in my experience, He just gives us a greater capacity to bear whatever burdens it is we carry.
Right.
And that comes in a lot of different ways for us. What I do see coming are some great tribulations, and I stand by that. Now, as far as timelines, everybody wants to pinpoint those. Again, I say, if the Lord wants to give you a timeline, He'll give you a timeline. I do have some timelines. I do have some dates. Most of those I have not even shared with my husband because the Lord has said it's for me, and it will even impede what He needs to do in His life to be able to provide for our family. And so He has an idea, and we talk about things, and that's even been hard for me because I have in this idea of mine in my perfect world, I should be able to share every nitty little gritty detail with my husband. Not so. If the Lord tells me, Julie, this is for you, then it helps me do what I need to do as a wife and mother to support him.
Right.
And then when I am able to tell him something, we have that conversation, and it's no different for him. He receives revelation about things as well, and when he feels prompted to talk to me about it, he comes to me, and then we come together in unity. And that's what the Lord wants, is he wants us to come together as sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, and work in unity as a collective whole with the gifts and talents he's given us so that we can have wonderful todays and tomorrows.
Right.
And happiness and true joy. Men are that they might have joy. He wants us to be happy.
Right.
And the Book of Mormon and the Bible go hand in hand. For those in the LDS audience, if we haven't read our Bible lately, that's a good idea. Mm-hmm. I've constantly been reminded by the Spirit in the last several months that I need to be kind of doubling down on my efforts with my scripture reading. And when maybe what worked for me even a month ago isn't going to work now with some of the things that I'm dealing with in my life. I need to be even doing more searching and pondering and praying about some things to be able to get through whatever it is I'm going to have to go through.
Right, right. And how everyone...
Anyway, there you go. What was that, like 20 minutes?
No, I think that's great. I think that how anyone prepares or goes about this or feels that what they should do, I say we give people the leeway to do that, even if you wouldn't do it that way or agree with that. Even those that are what if somebody did sell everything? If that's what they feel they should do, then let them do that without judgment. Yeah. I think we're so quick to judge what everyone else is doing and how everyone reacts to this. And I actually really appreciate you coming on the show, Julie. I think you've been nothing but just open about everything, and I appreciate that. This is not the normal Fox News Channel type of interview, but I actually appreciate this because you know what? This is a reality.
And I appreciate you. And some people might say, well, why did she go on the Kate Dalley show versus NBC or USA Today or any of these other media outlets? I will tell you it has to do with, one, feeling safe with a friend that I trust, and I trust your motives, and I trust your heart. So that's what I have to say about Kate.
Well, thank you, Julie.
I could say a whole lot more. The other part is obviously trying to follow the Spirit and making sure that the message gets out how it's supposed to, in the right way that the Lord would like, without it having it be twisted or manipulated or misconstrued.
Right.
And then really just the trust factor of knowing that I could come on this show and that you're not going to be judgmental. You're going to let me say what I need to say, and you're going to put that out to your audience in an open forum so they can hear whatever they want to hear and not have it be misconstrued by somebody who automatically is coming in as an oppositional force who seeks to kind of like distort the truth.
I totally understand.
And so thank you for that.
Well,
thank you. And thank you to Fox for making it possible, because obviously, somebody has to fund this stuff.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you. Thank you for that. Go to Julie's website. It's julieroweprepared.com. And you can even email her. You can contact her there. And also you can see all the things that she's writing about and feeling and thinking. And I just want to say thanks. Thanks, Julie, for coming on today.
Thank you.
All right.
And we have some more stuff coming up, so just stay tuned. I don't have dates yet. I don't usually give dates other than what you'll see on my website. So if somebody's talking dates, go to my website and see if there's any dates on there, because that's the only dates I've ever given or ever will.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thanks, Julie Rowe. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.